So let's read 1 Corinthians chapter 5. And since it's not a very big chapter, I want to go ahead and read that. There's 3 or 4 questions I definitely want to hit on this. This will be the main bulk of our study this morning. Whoever gets there first, somebody read 1 Corinthians chapter 5 for me.
You want the whole chapter?
Please.
It is actually reported that there is sexual immorality among you, and such sexual immorality as is not even named among the Gentiles, that a man has his father's wife. And you are puffed up, and have not rather mourned that he who has done this deed might be taken away from among you. For I indeed, as absent in body, but present in spirit, have already judged, as though I were present, him who has so done this deed. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, when you are gathered together, along with my spirit, with the power of our Lord Jesus Christ, delivered such a one to Satan, for the destruction of the flesh, that his spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord Jesus. Your glorying is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? Therefore purge out the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, since you truly are unleavened. For indeed Christ, our Passover, was sacrificed for us. Therefore let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, nor with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. I wrote to you in my epistle not to keep company with sexually immoral people. Yet I certainly did not mean with the sexually immoral people of this world, or with the covetous, or extortioners, or idolaters, since then you were in need to go out of the world. But now I have written to you not to keep company with anyone named a brother who is sexually immoral, or covetous, or an idolater, or a reviler, or a drunkard, or an extortioner, not even to eat with such a person. For what have I to do with judging those also who are outside? Do you not judge those who are inside? But those who are outside, God judges. But those who are outside, God judges. Therefore, put away from yourselves the evil person.
Okay, a lot to unpack in this section. You're going to see in the other Corinthian letters, there's going to be a lot related to what's going on here. So we're talking about the idea of purity here. I want to get started though in verse 1, where Paul says it is actually reported. Does anybody else have another translation other than is actually reported? Anything different in your versions?
John says it is reported commonly.
Okay, reported commonly. If you actually dive a little bit into it, a lot of commentaries look and say that Paul's almost looking at them and saying, I can't really believe what I'm hearing. So it's like an emphatic. It's not just a little common statement. He's saying, I'm hearing these reports. It's almost like he's in shock. What he's hearing. And why is Paul in shock in verse 1?
Because I think it's in chapter 2, he told a man is to have one wife.
Okay. There's definitely a problem going on, I think, of adultery here. But definitely in verse 1, I think it goes a little deeper than that.
The church here seems to be set apart in the wrong direction. They're actually behaving worse than the world around them in some ways.
Okay, definitely, and we're going to get into more of that in verse 2. We're going to unpack verse 2 quite a bit here in a second. Sure, we have a major church issue. He's definitely talking to the church, but what is also the sin in verse 1 here? What is so egregious about this particular act of immorality / adultery?
Pagans don't even tolerate that kind of immorality. It's not even, it's recognized as wrong even among worldly.
Okay, and absolutely, pagans don't tolerate what though? Who's the two in relation here?
Said man has the father's wife.
Okay, all right. So I don't know that this exactly this probably doesn't qualify as incestual, But this is about as close as you can get to not being at that point. Because think about that. This would be the man's stepmother. Okay. This is a real issue that's going on. Certainly one that doesn't require going unnoticed, sweeping under the rug. But if we go on to read over in verse 2, Paul is addressing, John was saying, as John was alluding to, is Paul addressing here in verse 2 the man or the church? Okay, now why, if we're talking about a problem between a man and his mother-in-law, or sorry, stepmother, why is he not talking to him here? Why is the church got a problem? I mean, they obviously didn't do this. Why is there a problem in verse 2?
Apparently they didn't address it. They were allowed it to happen,
Yeah, they were ignoring it. They were too arrogant.
Okay, so obviously they knew it was going on. They weren't unaware of this problem. This would be no different today than us knowing of some egregious sin some have committed, allowing them to continue to live in their sin, being okay with it, welcoming them, enjoying time with them, pretending nothing ever happened. And whatever reason they came up with in their head, whether it was peace, whether this person was a high up person, we really don't get enough evidence of why exactly they were allowing this, except that Paul thinks one of the reasons why is they have become what? Proud, arrogant. What do you think he means by that?
They're too puffed up that they're not noticing what's going on.
Okay. So it's either because of their ignoring Paul's previous letter, which we have in chapter 5, verse 9. If y'all noticed, I don't know if y'all caught that, it's a very small little verse with a lot of impact. In verse 9 it says, I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with immoral people. So he's obviously not talking about, they couldn't have known the letter he's writing now, so he's talking about a prior letter. So they've ignored a prior letter that is said not to associate with immoral people. So it could be the arrogance of ignoring that. And it could just be in general, the arrogance we've been talking about in the prior chapters and throughout the rest of Corinthians. These guys have a I'm going to do what I think is best problem. Not what God thinks is best, not what Paul thinks is best. Who's smarter than me? Who thinks they can do it better than me? And we've seen that time and time again. Arrogance, I think Michael's alluded to, arrogance is kind of not the root of all their problems, but it's certainly tied to about each one they have. These guys have become very self-reliant, self-sustaining, without thinking they need help, which is why Paul's persistence and Paul's urgency in writing this other letter. There's a reason they have so many letters coming to them, because he sees them having this problem. Okay. Before we get past verse 2, since this question is tied, I have to go with your thought question here. It says, how had the Corinthians responded to the immorality in their number? We already answered that part. How do you think they should have responded?
They should have tried to correct him.
Okay. In what manner?
dealt with the situation. They should have approached them and dealt with it.
Okay. All right.
They should have been upset. They should have been, I think he says there, in verse 2, ought you not rather to mourn? And then over in 2 Corinthians 7, he talks about godly sorrow that leads to repentance. And so they should have, been sad that this person was involved in the sin rather than allowing him to stay, not saying anything, not confronting him. They should have been upset for him and for the fact that they had sinned by allowing
good. Where's the heartbreak here? I mean, do they not? I mean, ask yourself first, do they not care about this individual's status at all? Are they so, which might lead back to the arrogance, and it might lead back to the selfishness. How can this not bother them? Or if it does, how can it not allow them to get to the point of not having some kind of feeling toward this person of sadness? Like, this is not just causing the church a problem. This individual has a major problem, and they're not even deserving to help this individual. Absolutely, there should have been some kind of mourning, some kind of consideration of care for this individual. What else? What's another? Whether it be an emotion or as y'all said, a punishment response, some kind of thing to help them change. What's another thing?
Well, on down there, he says they should destroy the man's flesh in order to save the soul. So how do you destroy his flesh?
Now, there you go.
I know David's not whipping him.
So whenever I think of destroying flesh, whenever I think of the relationship of how we treat a brother who is in error, constantly in error, and is unwilling to come back, they need to hurt. They need to hurt in some way. That can be multiple ways, but normally the way that is if they're disfellowship, one of the ways they got to hurt is they got to feel some loneliness. They got to feel a detachment. They've lost something. That's obviously a fleshly thing. They lost the desire to be with the brethren. They've lost desire of companionship. This huge group of people in the Corinthian church are no longer being on their side. That should hurt. And if it don't hurt now, it's probably eventually going to for that person. They realize he's got nobody with him. Now, obviously, he may have some people outside of that church that are willing to be on his side. That's normally what somebody would cling to if they got with disfellowship from. But that is the goal. There's cause some kind of physical hurt to them, some emotional pain to cause them to have a spiritual return.
Sometimes it's the consequence. I think of the prodigal son, and he was separated from his father, but the pain of that didn't hit him until he had the consequences of his own actions. And so when it says, deliver this man of Satan for the destruction of the flesh, if the pagans don't even, well, first of all, there's physical illnesses and other things that can happen from immorality. And then if the pagans don't even tolerate this, he would have been even further ostracized from even the worldly community. And so sometimes it's the consequences of those sinful actions that cause that pain, that cause the person, like the prodigal son in the pigsty, didn't have anything to eat, to think about what he's missing from the father, from his brethren. And so I thought of that in this circumstance specifically, since it talks about the pagans not tolerating. They both would have been kind of shunned by everybody.
Absolutely. This little sidebar, do we think it's wrong to pray for somebody to physically hurt to cause a spiritual result?
It's better than for an eternity.
Okay. So you got to kind of rack that in your head. I'm not saying that's an easy question that is answered in one line. But I've thought about that, because I've been in situations like that before. Is it okay for me to pray to God for something to happen, or anything to happen? I don't really care what pain it causes them to spiritually have a good result. I ask myself if that's okay to say, because they're in relation to the Corinthian church. At the very least, they should have had that. At the very least, there should have been something where they were in prayer with God over this issue. But they appear to have no, other than thinking about obviously what it can do to them by apparently throwing up some issue here. Because obviously this person who they're dealing with is not, we don't know this for sure, but I don't think this person just came off the street, just became a member of the church. There is some relation, or there is some either because of this individual's got prominence, or his parents do, or this is a longtime friend or cousin or family. I mean, something is causing them to hang on to this and sweep her on the rug. Obviously, if it's an outsider that became part of the church, it wouldn't be hard for them, no matter their motive, to do something here. But they are allowing their selfish pride, their selfish desires to allow this to go. But think on that on that question I asked, because as something I've thought about multiple times before. To me, like I said, it goes beyond that answer, but I think Karen answered that well. I think it has to start with, do you care more about this individual or this church as you're part of spiritual outcome, or do you care about our physical outcome as a group and as an individual? And if that question is answered first, and you agree on that answer first, I think that's going to lead to that answer that Paul's trying to give him in this letter. You have to get that down first. Who are you serving? That's the question he kind of goes back to the Corinthians on. He doesn't directly say that, but are you going to be serving yourselves, or are you going to be serving God? And if you were trying to serve God here, this wouldn't have been an issue in the first place. I'm not saying that like that's an easy thing. I obviously don't believe anybody here at this church or whatever has ever got wrapped up in something so egregious as this. I mean, this is really a big deal. But the relation here is what could we potentially allow, or what could we allow individually in our lives that could, as we're going to talk about second, a little 11 is the whole lump. What could be a problem there, John?
Yeah, I think Paul's obviously calling out this egregious example here, but I think it's also indicated in the text there in the first sentence that I don't think this is the only instance of immorality in this church. And very likely, knowing what we know about the culture in Corinth and the things that they were dealing with there, it very likely that it was a pervasive thing amongst the brethren themselves, and that may be why their reaction is so moved, is because that who's going to cast the first stone? Who is going to call out the sin in someone else when they know that they have the same problem? And we probably prefer not to call it out, or it to be called out at all. So it seems from the way that that's written that, even though he's calling out this most specific example because it's so bad that even the pagans around them don't, blush at it at least. But I think it's very likely that, this is a pervasive issue amongst the brethren there.
Very good point. Very good point.
Two things here. First of all, there are churches that don't want to take action and have elders, and they don't like stirring the pot, and they'll let things go on, and they won't do the correction. I don't know how strong these, the church knew, all these were, and how much they knew, but they knew enough about this. And also you're talking about, praying for somebody that's not happening. This is a very, very strong statement that Paul makes to turn on over to Satan for the flesh. So, that's what we're hoping when we discipline, that they will miss this, that they will miss their bread and all that, and come back and all this work. But that's why we do the discipline, so they are turned away from all their people that, that they love.
Very good. Very good.
Ryan, when I was reading this too, I had the same feeling. This family must have been a prominent family, not only in the community but in the church. And this could be one of the reasons why they hesitated to discipline the son.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think we know, but I definitely think it's a combo of all the things that have been said. Like I said, John brought a good point. I really think that obviously the first few chapters and the chapters after this, he's gonna go into some more detail of what other things the rest of the church members have been doing. They are full of issues here. Really, really hard to blot out issues. You've got so many of your own going on. But I think those are all part of that. Yes, still.
Just an example, we had a friend where I grew up at Douglas Hills Church, and his mom, her son had fallen away, and he was into drugs. He was actually a drug dealer, and she told me one time she prayed for something bad to happen to him to bring him back, and that she would even take care of him for the rest of his life if that should happen. Well, it did. He tried to commit suicide, and he ended up, in a wheelchair. She took care of him for the rest of his life. He used a little computer to talk to people because it damaged his brain, but not enough. And he came back to the Lord. He was actually rebaptized, and she took care of him till he died. And I know he's in heaven because he was faithful, but she took care of him. She bathed him, she dressed him, she brought him to church, but he had enough faculty to come back. I don't know if I'm sure Linda Herrick on. Oh, yes, but anyway.
Is that something that we should pray for ourselves too, that if there's a blind or a sin in our life that is difficult to give up, or something that we are doing maybe that we're ignorant of, is that something we should pray for ourselves? To let something happen for us to see, to be refined in that way?
Yeah, I think it's a great question to ask. And then accept whatever that is on. I think God knows the level we're at of what's needed to assist with coming back. I don't think everybody needs, I'm assuming not everybody is so far down in certain things where they have to have almost a life-ending circumstance to cause that to happen. But I think it's very much, I certainly don't think our prayers should include make it as mild as possible. Whatever is needed. We also pray for things sometimes to allow God, for circumstances, to put God in our lives to impact someone, whether it's somebody in the situation Phil or somebody. So we won't pray for that, and then when it happens, then we just ignore it. I've asked myself that multiple times. Did God just put me in a situation when I asked for it? Put me in a situation where somebody comes to me, or whether it's needing help, or struggling with something. I'm not saying this deep, but just whatever something. And then, have I just ignored them? Like maybe was that the first? So when we pray for refinement, we can't be upset with the results with that of what God's given. If you want God to give you something to allow yourself to be blotted out with whatever that causes you to be able to come back, or whatever causes your brother to come back. We should want whatever result that allows us to get to heaven, that allows each of us to get to heaven. Like I said, if they would have started with that core question and core thing in their mind, which, like I said, I keep on back John's point, that's a great point, that if obviously they didn't have God at the core at that moment, because there were so many issues they had individually, that they were probably having an issue of trying to say, how can I judge this guy when half of us are doing something similar to this? So anyway, all excellent points. All excellent points. Definitely, always they should have responded. Like I said, we mentioned morning, we mentioned question 2 there. We mentioned spirit. There definitely should have been. Before the discipline, it's kind of like the progression of emotion when this thing happens. Mourning, and then there really should have been some sort of outrage. It took Paul to have the outrage in a letter, which how much can you see on a piece of paper for in an outrage form? Somebody should have came up, individually. Multiple people should have came up. There should have been some kind of anger toward this. There should have been some kind of emotion that showed some kind of semblance of Jesus turning over the tables here for the money changers. There should have been some kind of sort of spiritual outrage here, and then of course church discipline. Always remembering it's for their good, not church discipline. I'm just going to follow the rules. Yeah, God tells us to do it. You're supposed to do it because God says it. But remembering that we're doing that because it's something to spiritually help that person. Hoping that something God can do, something can be done to cause them to come back. I'm not going to read that, but it's very similar to the Carol says delivering the Satan. It's similar to 1 Timothy 1:20. Natural consequences that can happen that can allow you to come back. Natural consequences of your actions that hopefully the results can allow you to come back to God. Okay. In verse 6, it says your boasting is not good. Do you not know, once again, he's going back to the arrogance. He's mentioned this 2 or 3 times already in this chapter. Your boasting is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? Okay, so we've gotten, he's still hammering the church here. So what does he mean when he says a little leaven leavens the whole lump of dough? Anybody may express, somebody kind of explain what that means to me.
The sin in the midst of the church can affect all the dough in the church.
Okay, how so?
It spreads. Leaven spreads.
Okay. And why does he have little leaven?
It doesn't take very much to make it spread.
Okay.
A pinch. He's correlating this with yeast. I'm assuming it takes a little yeast to rise dough, and it can just keep rising.
Okay.
Unless punched down.
So, obviously this is a big issue, and obviously, and he may be talking about maybe this is more like one person, but relating this to us today, could there be one small issue that we have that we sleep under and say it's just going to take care of itself and it's never going to affect anything because not that many people know it, it's not really, it's kind of a gray area kind of deal. We'll sleep under it off, we're never going to talk about it again. Can that little thing like that affect a group of Christians?
Yes.
I think we talked about last time, there is a lot of factors that go in whenever there is a problem that people don't agree on spiritually. We have side picking, people saying if they think that person's right or not. Some people don't agree on the punishment. Some people don't agree with how they should be dealt with. If we don't all have something to come to terms on this is how we're going to handle this, we let it go. Everybody's up to how they want to do it. This is why we have elders. This is why we have a unified church that agrees to whatever God says. Because if you just have a bunch of members that just want to do whatever they think is best, the chances of you getting 100% agreement is very minuscule. And the reason I know that because I have heard churches before tell me that, especially ones without elders, that they have a hard time agreeing on every issue that comes up in the church because they have so many minds going into it. So it's something. This is an issue, and all issues in this church. He's saying you as a church need to put out any little leaven that can cause the massive church problem. Why would you want to slide a little bit? Why would you want to let a little bit slide when you know it can cause such a major issue? Anybody else on that? If we go on, if we tee on verse 7, it says, count the old leaven so that you may be a new lump. So what does that mean? Count the leaven so you may be a new lump. Okay, they're obviously not. They're not reborn again, or they're not Christian again. They're no church. But it's like they allow the impurity to get wiped away. You allowed yourself to be clean again. So, we have two spiritual, we listed a second ago that we're trying to help this person, right? Church discipline is allowing this person to come back. Church discipline also allows your church to stay pure, so you don't have other members having a problem. So there's two spiritual things that are good from doing this. Every time we hear the word discipline now, especially in this day and age, it's just like bad word. Nobody likes hearing the word discipline anymore, whether it's in church or your kids, or nobody likes that term anymore. It's like a bad term. That was what God did throughout the entire Bible, was some kind of spiritual discipline to cause whoever was the Israelites or some individual to have a reaction to come back. Discipline is what God is saying is required to have somebody become a follower, a disciple, a follower. Okay. Anything else on verse 6 there about the leaven?
Just like to your point about how you can't just sweep it under the rug. So yeast is alive. It's just a little bit, like I make a piece of crust. It's like 4 cups of flour, but a teaspoon of yeast. So it's just a little bit that goes in there. But until that is thrown away, it just continues to grow, even though it's just a little bit. And so we think that maybe we can't, we can keep a conflict hidden, or we can keep a sin hidden, or whatever it is, but that's not how it works. And I like his comparison here, because just that little bit that we think in a worldly way that it's nothing, it's just going to keep growing and growing until it's neutralized or thrown out, or you start over. And so with elders, can kind of keep a check on that, but we can keep a check on it, in our own life. Is there a leaven? Is there something small that just keeps eating at us or keeps growing? And how can we neutralize that?
Very good. Excellent comments. Anything else on that? Okay. A couple more verses and we'll go on to 1 Corinthians 6. In verse 9 and 10, it says, I wrote to you, my letter, not to associate with the moral people. I did not at all mean with the moral people of this world, or with the covetous and swindlers, or with idolaters, or then you would have to go out of the world. Okay, so when you guys read verse 9 and 10, who is he saying not to associate with?
The people in the world.
Is it people in the world, or is it immoral people in the church? In the church.
You have to read verse 11.
Okay, go on ahead and read it.
But now I have written to you not to keep company with anyone named a brother who is sexually immoral, or covetous, or an adulterer, or a reviler, or a drunkard, or an extortioner, not even to eat with such a person.
Okay, so verse 10 clearly says it is impossible to avoid people in the world that do this. Okay, they're going to be around you, or you'll be in a bubble the rest of your life. I mean, this is not feasible. It's not possible. Obviously, he's not talking about association as in you're supposed to go out and enjoy time all the time with these kind of the people that constantly are in this mode. That's not the association he's talking about here. You physically have to be around, okay, these people. So we can't be out of the world. But I'm writing to you to talk about your brethren, okay? Why would we want to, knowing somebody doing something egregious as this, for the reasons we said before, the impact on ourselves, the impact on our church, the spiritual condition of that person. How can we have so little care for the person, ourselves, the church, and everybody this is going to impact to keep associating, sweeping something under the rug and making like everything's okay? So the audience for sure is the church here, and the audience of who we are not to associate is the brethren. So a brother is to be disciplined in this manner. So you need to mark this book. I know there's other ones we go to when we're talking about church discipline, actually give specific instruction, but this is a fantastic one to go where the basis for discipline and how to handle that in Paul's letter here. And then reading verse 11, the last thing I got on this. I just want to make note that brethren, Well, let me just ask a question. What standard? What standard should we as brothers and sisters in Christ hold each other to? What kind of standard?
God's word.
Okay? Which is what level of standard? Pretty low standard? Why are we scared to hold each other to a high standard? Okay, well, why are we so nervous to say we expect some things out of each other? Not saying that we expect a person who just became a Christian to know somebody's been a Christian 30 years about the Bible. That's not what we're talking about here. But why do we use so many excuses to not hold each other to a higher standard? I think Paul's trying to get out of them here that you should expect more out of your fellow brothers. You should expect more out of yourself here. You guys have hit you guys have set this bar, not even at lukewarm. I mean, it's just low here. So you don't, anybody that seems to drift anywhere near that, in this case, this guy who's done this act with his stepmother, it's just, it's tolerant. I think we get nervous. I'm saying we as in if I think that we're not holding each other to a higher standard. We should all be holding each other, as Mom said, the standard of the Bible, realizing that is not a loosey-goosey standard. That is something that we should use to examine ourselves first, and then how we are as individuals. And we don't use that as you're doing this wrong and beat each other up with it, but to refine each other. I mean, that's what we're there, right? To sharpen each other's iron, to help refine each other. We're supposed to help. We're supposed to hold each other to a higher standard. And if, like I said, in addition to all the other wonderful things y'all mentioned, if that was something this church is already doing, this problem right here would not have become an issue in 1 Corinthians 5 with this brother.
I wonder if judging one another was taboo in their culture, like it is in ours,
That's a good thought.
with the increased worldly knowledge and the self-reliance and the self-sufficiency and the, wanting to hear new things and wanting to learn new things, everybody kind of having their own truth. I wonder if it was taboo, politically incorrect like it is today. Well, you can't judge me, it's not your place to judge me. I think that gets in our way today is we don't want to be labeled judgmental or legalistic or, like you said, disciplinarians, and I wonder if it was the same way for them.
Very good. Very good. I think he's about to give us some, but about another minute. Any other comments on 1 Corinthians 5? Okay, I think Michael said he wanted, I think we're going to go ahead and we'll finish talking about the other three sections of Scripture, 1 Corinthians 6, 2 Corinthians 6, and 2 Corinthians 12. So please read that, and we'll finish the questions. Thank you all for your participation. Sorry about the microphone.